Star Wars Obi-Wan Kenobi is finished, and in our conclusion, its finale was the best part of the series yet. We're going to be spoiling pretty much everything that happened in this video, so if you haven't seen the episode yet, go do that first. Kenobi wrapped itself up pretty nicely. That last episode provided all sorts of closure, tying things off and leading all of our main characters right into A New Hope. It was also a far bit better, we would argue, than most of the series has been so far. Don't get us wrong, we've been enjoying Kenobi, but it's been a little mediocre thus far, though this finale changes all of that. Kenobi stuck the landing. It avoided a whole lot of choices that could have cheapened the show, and it ended up better for it. In this video, we'll be giving our thoughts on the series and why we think the finale took the whole show up a notch.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
We're going to be honest with you, we weren't all that hyped for Kenobi. We were happy to see Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen return to Star Wars, but we were concerned that Kenobi just wouldn't have any stories to tell. We went into this series fearing that it would fall into one of two traps. On the one hand, we were concerned that it wouldn't have much of a story at all. It could have been yet another Star Wars show set on Tatooine, stretching random Tatooine things into a few episodes worth of obstacles for wooden protagonists to just kind of overcome without much character development. On the other hand, we were concerned that Kenobi would break the law. Just as much as we didn't want a slice of life series about Obi-Wan's troubles with the Jawas or some Sith like that, we didn't want Obi-Wan to go on some grand crusade against the Empire, running into Jedi survivors and Clone Wars characters left and right before fighting some over-the-top battle against Vader for an hour. We weren't confident that Kenobi could thread the needle between those two pitfalls, telling a convincing story while staying true to the lore. We're glad to have been wrong about this one. Kenobi told a nice, subtle story that wasn't only interesting and felt worth telling, but one that remained grounded and focused on a handful of important characters. It remained extremely faithful to the lore, making sure to knit the continuity pack together perfectly as it went. Of course, it wasn't without problems. The first few episodes of Kenobi far exceeded our expectations, avoiding those aforementioned pitfalls, but we still got less confident in the show as time went on. The show started to slump a little after the first two episodes. The third episode's confrontation with Vader, while cool, seemed premature and contrary to Vader's statement in A New Hope that Kenobi had been the master when they last fought. The reuse of the whole rescue Leia plotline got a bit tiresome, as did the persistent stupidity of the Empire. But the finale, in our opinion, ended the show on a strong note and made up for the past few episodes. The reason the finale was so great boils down to one key thing, in our opinion. It kept things simple. Kenobi didn't go for some over-the-top final episode. Instead, it stuck with the same reserved pace and subtlety that has been the show's biggest strength all along. It didn't pull in any new characters out of the blue to save the day at the last minute. There were no surprise cameos from Ahsoka or Quinlan Vos or anyone like that. The ghost of Qui-Gon made an appearance, but only at the end, which was a nice way to cap the series off. Aside from him, the finale told its story exclusively with characters and plot points that had already been established in the series, which is how it should be done. Of course, we can't talk about the Kenobi finale without talking about that final fight. The big promise of this show has been that it would show a rematch between Kenobi and Vader, something many fans were hyped for. We were a bit more cautious. Kenobi had to tread very carefully when it came to that, or it risked undermining the fight between the two characters in A New Hope. Again, we feared that the final confrontation between Kenobi and Vader would be over the top, with flashy displays of great power and cameos from Force ghosts, or even worse, other living Jedi. But Kenobi took a much more measured road. The final fight was epic, but it was grounded. There was some fancy telekinesis, but no backbreaking acrobatics, no Force absurdity, and most importantly, the fight was between Kenobi and Vader with no outside intervention. This more grounded duel was good for a few reasons. Firstly, it shows that Vader and Kenobi weren't the men they were on Mustafar. They're older and slower, if also wiser and more powerful. Secondly, it sets up the duel in A New Hope nicely. It's flashier than the original lightsaber duel, but not to the point where it overshadows it completely. It provides a nice transition from Mustafar to the Death Star rather than interrupting it, as we were afraid it would. Lastly, it leaves the relationship between Kenobi and Vader exactly where it started in A New Hope. In that battle, Kenobi proved himself to still be the master, validating Vader's statement in A New Hope. At the same time, the battle gave Kenobi and Vader a better perspective on each other and what they'd become, which transitioned nicely to the original trilogy. The battle served the story, not the other way around, which is the way it should be. Speaking of Kenobi's overall story, let's talk about character for a bit. Characters aren't just regular old storytelling elements. They're the driving force of any good story. The best stories craft really good characters, set them in place, and then just let their motivations play out, bringing them into collaboration or conflict as they evolve. Kenobi, we're pleased to say, was a very character-driven story. Furthermore, unlike many recent Star Wars stories, it was a character-driven story with a carefully controlled pool of main characters. Aside from Qui-Gon's brief appearance at the end and that one homeless clone, there were no cameos in Kenobi, which is a good thing. Firstly, this is because it makes the universe too small when every little character appears in a single story. Ahsoka doesn't need to be in everything, and the more she appears, the smaller the universe gets. Secondly, more cameo characters would not only have added nothing of value to the story, but they would have actively detracted from it. At the end of Revenge of the Sith, Kenobi, Yoda, and the future founders of the Rebel Alliance believe that they're the last of the old heroes left in the galaxy. In A New Hope, Obi-Wan's views on the matter are unchanged. The fact that so many Jedi seem to have survived Order 66 undermines this. It would have been even worse, however, if those Jedi survivors played major roles in Kenobi. The show revealed that there were survivors out there, but established that there were very few, and those that remained loyal to the Jedi mostly watched out for untrained Force sensitives. This was the right approach. It kept the story grounded, and it set the stage for A New Hope. That was a common theme in Kenobi, which was good to see. Many of the show's main characters, Obi-Wan, Vader, Leia, Luke, and Bail Organa, were characters from A New Hope, and Kenobi did a surprisingly phenomenal job of ending their arcs exactly where they would pick up in the original trilogy. Kenobi, Vader, and Leia were all given plenty of room to develop into the characters that'd be in A New Hope, and it was fun watching their arcs play out. The show's portrayal of Kenobi struck a nice balance between the prequels and the originals, allowing him to come to peace with his past in the way that the prequels didn't have time for. Vader was the same way. He was characterized much like A New Hope, but he evolved Anakin Skywalker a lot more than usual, which the story obviously provides plenty of reason for. Kenobi also gives Vader something to learn from, preparing him to face his old master one last time on the Death Star. Young Leia, meanwhile, is probably the first child character in a Star Wars stories that we've ever liked. If Carrie Fisher was still around, she'd surely be proud. The other show's major characters were also written very well. The Inquisitors were fun, as always, and the show's original characters were all worthwhile additions. We liked seeing the Proto-Rebellion on Jabim, and we also loved the Third Sister. The Third Sister was the most important new character in Kenobi, and in our opinion, she was actually the most compelling. She, not Vader, was Kenobi's foil in this show. Like Kenobi, Reva had suffered terrible trauma at the hands of Darth Vader during the rise of the Empire, and like Kenobi, she had never really come to terms with it. But while Kenobi chose to hide from this pain, Reva let it consume her. The Third Sister was a churning mess of bitterness and barely restrained fury, a perfect counterbalance to Kenobi's caution and calm. We said last week that we wanted her character to be killed off in the finale, but honestly, we can't knock the ending Kenobi gave her. In hindsight, it works nicely with the purpose of her character. She and Kenobi started in the same place of pain, and though their paths diverged, both eventually came to a place of acceptance and repentance. With that said, all the characters in Kenobi were done extremely well, and the writers did a great job of letting them drive the story, not the other way around. Specifically, our favorite part was the duel between Kenobi and Vader, and in our opinion, it's one of the sequences that really made this finale memorable. But what do you think? What were your thoughts on Kenobi? Feel free to let us know in the comment section below. As always guys, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.